The matriarch phase doesn't announce itself. There's no moment when you wake up and think, today is the day that everything changes. What happens is much more subtle than that. And so many women miss it, even when they're watching for it. It shows up in a series of shifts. Something feels different in your body, something feels different in how you're showing up at work. Something that used to drive you has now started to feel empty. And you can't quite put your finger on why. And because there's no context for what you're experiencing, most women have one of two responses. They push harder, trying to get back to the version of themselves they recognize, or they quietly worry that something is wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with you, but pushing harder won't fix it. And today, I want to give you 3 signs that tell you you've entered the matriarch phase. And I want to talk about what it means when all 3 show up at the same time, because that's the moment that determines how this phase goes for you. Welcome to the Frequency of Yes, the podcast for women leaders creating limitless success, deep empowerment, and divine wealth on their terms. I'm Kirstin Carey, and I'm obsessed with helping badass women feel good in their bodies so they can sustain wildly successful businesses without grinding or sacrificing themselves. The first sign you've entered the matriarch phase is that the drive to prove yourself drops. Or, as one of my clients puts it, your big old bag of fucks gets smaller. And what that means in practice is that the things that used to motivate you stop working the same way. Recognition doesn't hit the same. Achievement doesn't feel as electric. And you don't feel like you have to be anything for anyone because impressing others just isn't that important anymore. The drive that carried you through the mother phase starts to lose its charge. And for a lot of us during the mother phase, the grind wasn't something that we just endured. It was something we actually genuinely loved. The building phase was exciting. It was chaotic in a way that generated momentum. And every new client, every launch, every milestone released that energy. And it felt like proof. It was proof of your competence, proof of your independence, proof that you belonged exactly where you were. And even when the ROI wasn't quite there yet, or even when the revenue was slower than you wanted it to be, the recognition was still building. And that was okay because you had time to fix the health later, time to slow down later, time to actually experience the life you were building once you had built enough of it. And you were building for someday, and the grind was the vehicle. A former client of mine reached out last week after listening to one of the earlier episodes of this podcast. And she originally came to me years ago after navigating cancer treatment, which triggered an autoimmune condition. And she texted me and said, I love the podcast. I am doing so well. And though I still wish I had worked with you 15 years earlier than I did, because going through hormone changes and cancer treatment, trying to work during treatment instead of taking care of me, and trying to navigate a career I truly disliked was emotionally, mentally, and physically draining. And she's not alone in that. In my years of running a health and wellness practice, I worked with hundreds of women dealing with autoimmune and related issues. And what I heard over and over was some version of the same thing. I wish I had known this sooner. I wish I hadn't pushed off my health for so long. And if I had known what I know now, I would have done things differently. And of course, right? We can't take what we know now and go back, but we can take that information as we move forward. The problem was never that these women didn't care about themselves. The problem was that the grind gave them something real. It was worth, it was momentum, the feeling that the sacrifices were accumulating into something meaningful. And the body for a long time absorbed it and kept going. But someday has a deadline. And for a lot of us, that deadline is now. The fatigue that used to resolve after a good night's sleep doesn't clear the same way. The weight that shifted doesn't respond to what worked before. The brain fog that shows up after a hard stretch doesn't lift as fast. And these things feel bigger now because the margin is smaller. The buffer that youth provided is totally gone. And so when the need to prove yourself starts to fade, when the achievements that used to feel electric start to feel neutral, the instinct is to assume that you've just lost your drive. And you haven't. It's that the proving phase has completed And the next phase doesn't run on performance and validation. It runs on embodied authority, which requires a different source of fuel, and it requires a different kind of structure. And the reason this transition is so disorienting is that most of us have no framework for it. It's not just the signs are subtle. It's that most of us have no context for what's happening, no framework that tells us this is a recognized transition, it has a trajectory, and there's a way through it. For the generations before us, the model was pretty straightforward. You move from the maiden phase of childhood into the mother phase once you got your period and you became a young woman. And then when you were finished raising your family, you stepped directly into the crone phase to help your children raise their families and become more of the wise woman in the background. And back in the day, the mother phase was where most things and most of the action was. It was where you built, you raised, you grinded, and maybe you even had a job, but eventually you moved from the elder or into the elder crone phase role. Now, there really wasn't anything in between the mother and the crone phases because there didn't really need to be. Women weren't living as long. They weren't leading as long. They were not building the way the women of today are building. Gen X women are the first generation to really hit this stage of life with companies to run, with another 20 and sometimes 30 years of creative capacity ahead of us, and with no intention of winding down. The old model doesn't account for us. So when the shifts start out of the mother phase, we have nothing to orient against. We just know that something feels different. And without context, different gets read and misread as wrong. So here's the biological layer underneath all of it, because it reframes everything. Though perimenopause is getting talked about more today than it ever has, it's still a horribly misunderstood phase, and it's typically dismissed as something that we just have to suffer through or forcibly medicate and control. But it's not just a reproductive transition, it's a full system recalibration. And if you're not prepared for it, it can take you out. And it's not supposed to. We are not designed to just suck it up and suffer or simply mute the experience. And if more women understood what was happening, they would move through it more easily and more empowered. First, perimenopause can begin in your 30s, and it can last 20 years, though most women are in the throes of it for 3 to 10. And it's not just a your body is shutting down and your hormones are disappearing situation. There's so much more to it. Because before menopause, your ovaries and your adrenal glands are sharing the sex hormone production. And as perimenopause progresses, the ovaries slow down their production and the adrenal glands are supposed to take over to ease the transition. But if your adrenals are already fatigued from stress and nervous system dysregulation and overworking, they don't have the reserve to compensate because they're already overloaded. So they can't pick up the slack. They just can't. And that's when you see hot flashes kicking in, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, fatigue, brain fog, they become daily issues. And your moods can swing violently and emotional responses can feel intense. Happy, sad, joy, fear, they all feel bigger. Or you dig deeper into disassociating from those feelings. And a lot of women and doctors and therapists, they simply see these symptoms as typical signs of aging. So mood-altering medications are prescribed. HRT begins, and we all laugh it off as part of the process of becoming a crone. But secretly, women in this phase, especially established women business owners, they fear they're losing their edge. So they keep pushing the same pace, the same structure, the same model, waiting for their bodies to just cooperate again. But it won't. And it's not because you need to give in and just fade into that great good night. The body is communicating that you need to adjust and step into the matriarch phase with intention. Now, the first sign we talked about is the proving drive drops. The second sign is that your capacity changes. Sleep starts getting unpredictable. Recovery takes longer. Stress that used to metabolize quickly starts to linger. Brain fog shows up at the most inconvenient times. Pain in your joints becomes common. Weight shifts in ways that doesn't respond to what worked before. And emotional responses feel intense, sometimes way out of proportion to what triggered them. So, going back to the biology, as ovarian hormone production decreases during perimenopause, the adrenals are expected to compensate. And if those adrenals are already depleted from years of chronic stress and overextension, they don't have the reserve to do it. And the mistake most women make here is treating it as a discipline problem. So they double down and they add another system or more formulas to keep them on track. They restructure their schedule, they cut things out just to fill them back up again 2 weeks later because the business still has to run. The structure is the problem. The business was designed for the woman you were when you started this business in your 30s or early 40s. The pace, the client load, the offers, the model, all of it was built around a version of your psychology and your physiology that has changed. And when you try to run a body that is recalibrating through a system that was built for a different biological reality, eventually something gives. Now, I want to pause here and talk about what it looks like when the signals get ignored long enough, because there are specific physical signs that tell you the transition is not going well. And most women don't connect them to what's happening. The NIH and the US Department of Health and Human Services reported that by age 50, 80% of women have uterine fibroids. 80%. And most women have no idea because fibroids are often asymptomatic until they're not. When they do become symptomatic, they disrupt hormonal balance, create chronic inflammation, affect energy, and interfere with what I describe as a woman's energetic and feminine flow. And it does this in ways that are profound, even if they're not showing up on a standard lab panel. And I was one of those women. A few years ago, I had an acute nerve pinch in my back that put me in the hospital. And after some fairly invasive imaging, a surgeon strutted into my room. He had slicked back white hair. He clearly spent some time in the gym and was wearing a shirt that was just one size too small. And he was the kind of man who looked like he had a very expensive convertible sitting in a reserved spot in the hospital garage with a placard with his name on it. No judgment, just giving you context. So he quickly introduced himself and said, without sitting down, without asking me anything, he said, "We're getting you prepped for a full hysterectomy." And I was like, "What? I'm not open to a full hysterectomy. Why would you do that?" And he said, in a tone that made it very clear he did not appreciate me questioning this, he said, "To remove a mass showing on your MRI, plus you're nearly 50. For the record, I was 48. Plus you're nearly 50, he said, so you don't need those parts anymore. Don't need those parts." So I said, "I'm not a car. Does this mass have anything to do with my pain?" And he said, "No. But again, you don't need those parts, so we might as well remove them too." So I told him I wasn't agreeing to anything. I demanded a second opinion. And after another several hours, someone explained to me that the mass was a fibroid. And though it was considerably a large fibroid, it was not a crisis requiring immediate surgery. So I left the hospital without the surgery, and I spent the next year researching, sitting with my body, and listening to the stories of other women. And I found an incredible female surgeon who was open to finding the solution that worked best for me. And she removed the fibroid using the least invasive option. She left me only with this tiny little scar and my entire reproductive system intact. And I share this story because the medical system has a long and well-documented history of treating women's bodies and our emotional health as problems to be managed and controlled rather than systems to be understood. And when you're already in a state of depletion, when you're already running on fumes and pushing past the signals, you are far more vulnerable to that kind of intervention. You're exhausted. You want someone to fix it. And when someone in a white coat with a very confident tone hands you a solution, you can get sucked in before you understand the message underneath. The signs that you've pushed too hard and the transition isn't going well aren't always that dramatic, though. They can look like chronic fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, sugar and wine cravings, persistent brain fog that starts affecting your work, emotional volatility and anxiety that just feels out of character, and digestive issues, weight shifts, or hormonal changes that your doctor wants to medicate before anyone asks why they're happening. And these are not random, disconnected, unconnected symptoms. They're the body turning up the volume on a message that it's been sending out for a while. And the longer the message gets ignored, the more disruptive the delivery becomes. The third sign is that your tolerance for misalignment disappears. Early in your career, you could have probably pushed through it. You had things to prove and timelines to hit. The cost of tolerating a difficult client, an offer that you'd outgrown, a business model that didn't quite fit anymore was a price that you were still willing to pay because the bigger goal justified it. In the matriarch phase, that tolerance disappears, and it's faster than most women expect. Clients who drain your energy stop being manageable and just start feeling annoying and genuinely wrong. Business models built around constant output stop feeling demanding, and they just start feeling like they don't belong here anymore. And the way your calendar is structured, the team dynamics that require you to emotionally overextend, the offers you've delivered so many times you could do them in your sleep, these things that were low-grade fiction at some point become intensely loud. Women often describe this as a persistent sense that something is off, even when the business looks successful from the outside. The revenue is there, the team is functioning, there's no obvious crisis, and yet something is wrong. That feeling is not dissatisfaction. It's diagnostic information. Your internal signaling system has gotten more precise over time, not less. And when something no longer fits who you are becoming, the body and the mind stop cooperating with it. That is a very accurate instrument doing its job. Any one of these three signs can appear on its own at different points in your life. Capacity will shift, misalignment will surface, and the drive to prove yourself will fade. But when all three are showing up together, that's a specific message. That's the matriarch phase becoming undeniable. The drive to prove your worth has completed its purpose. Your body is telling you that the current structure does not match your physiology. Your internal compass is refusing to stay quiet about what no longer belongs in your life or your business. And these are not three separate problems. They are one coherent message. The structures you've been living in and working inside of were built for a different phase of your life. And the instinct most accomplished women have at that moment is to just push harder, more optimization, more discipline, more effort to get back to the version of themselves they recognize. And it doesn't work. You cannot white knuckle your way through a biological and emotional transition like this. The body has been sending signals. The question is whether you respond to them now by choice or wait until the body makes a decision for you. Again, I've worked with hundreds of women who waited until after their bodies began to break down to take action. And what I can tell you with 100% certainty is it is much easier to stop the progression of a body breakdown than it is to come back from the fractured pieces. And the solution is simple, though it doesn't always feel easy. Redesign for who you are becoming. Step into the matriarch phase on purpose with your eyes open and design your life as you want it to be. That's the path. Looking honestly at your leadership structure, your business model, your pace, your client relationships, the relationships all around you, and your physical health, and ask, does this match the woman I am now, or was it built for someone I used to be? The women who move through this phase well are not the ones who push through and muscle their way to the other side. They're the ones who recognize the transition early and begin redesigning with intention before the body is forced to escalate. If you are noticing the drive to prove yourself fading, the capacity shifting, and your tolerance for misalignment collapsing, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not burning out. You are not losing your edge. You are entering the matriarch phase, and that transition requires redesign. And the way you operated in the mother phase will not carry you through this one. The work I do with women inside richly resourced programs is exactly this. We look at the biological reality of where you are, the business structure you've built, and the leadership identity you're stepping into. And we design them to fit together, to build the life you're stepping into, not the woman you were, the woman you are becoming. And if you hear yourself in what we've talked about today, the place most women start is with the richly resourced audit. And this is not a free strategy call. It's a structured diagnostic and a personalized report. Before we meet, you complete a detailed intake that looks at your business model, your leadership role, your capacity, and the biological reality of the phase you're in. And from that information, I create a 20-page assessment that maps out where your business is, what your life is looking like, how they're aligned with the matriarch phase, and where they're quietly draining and sucking the life out of you. And then we meet twice. In the first session, I'm going to walk you through the report so you can clearly see what is actually happening inside your business and your body right now. The second session, we're going to translate that clarity into a practical plan for how your business should operate in this next phase. And you're going to leave with 3 things that most women in this stage have never had before: a clear map of what is no longer working, a clear picture of where the real leverage is, and a strategy for redesigning your business around the woman you are now. And if that level of clarity would be really useful to you right now, you can find the richly resourced audit at evolveminded.com/audit. Now, in the next episode, we're going to get into what the redesign inside the matriarch phase looks like in practice, what changes, what stays, and how to make the transition without burning down everything that you've built. I'll see you then.